Hello and welcome, fellow motorsports fans. It has finally happened. Our Lord and Savior Andrea Kimi Antonelli has bagged his first F2 victory, and as always I'm here to tell you all about it. But since there has been a lot of different formula action, we begin in the slowest of the classes. We begin in Spanish F4, where Keanu Alazari is still comfortably leading the championship despite a rather curious incident in the first race, which I can show to you here, where he essentially just lost his front wing while running over a curb. Very much undeserved DNF in my opinion, but nonetheless a very convincing championship leader. And on a different note, his brother Adam also had his debut this weekend. And truth be told, it wasn't spectacular, but it was a very good debut, very solid all around. I believe like a P12 or 14-ish in a Technicar, so pretty good result as well. And I am very much looking forward to his full season next year. The real star of the weekend though was Mattia Colnaghi, with a dominant win, or actually a pair of dominant wins, propelling him to P2 in the championship. And truth be told, it was a very MP dominated weekend all around. The case in point, Maciej Gladish also got his maiden victory in the third race. So really in this battle, Campos versus MP at the sharp end of the grid, Campos is failing its ace drivers a tiny bit, making it more difficult for them to actually fight for the championship. On the flip side, we did have almost a bit of a special appearance from Tim Gerhardt, the Monlo Motorsports driver who got their by far best weekend so far of the season. And Tim Gerhardt is a German karting graduate. Well, he's not German, but he did race in the German karting championship in shifter karts, also on a European level. But I mainly have fond memories of his time in the DKM. So very nice that he's doing well here right now. He was one of those guys I had down as one of the low-key good, but probably never going to get anywhere near F1 caliber drivers. So hopefully he can build on this and, create a nice little career for himself somewhere. We also had the faster cars competing at Paul Ricard over in Eurocup-3, and here it is really again all about the aforementioned MP versus Campos battle, but this time with MP driver Bruno Del Pino at the core of the entire thing, and sort of with a very up and down kind of weekend, with an incredibly dominant performance in the first race. Really one of those, about as dominant as they come in spec single-seater racing. But then in the second race, he had an incredibly costly stall on the grid, and he recovered up to around P10-ish, but obviously that is a big loss of points, which also means he dropped back behind teammate Javier Sagrera in the standings. So if you recall, we had a three-way tie between the MP Motorsports leaders, Tanja Velo in there as well. Unfortunately, he wasn't anything spectacular this weekend. But this leaves us in the weird scenario where Del Pino looked like the quicker guy, but Sagrera is back ahead of him in the championship. And then on an entirely different note, we had the Campos ace Christian Ho, now in the championship lead, and truth be told, probably the star of the weekend. He bagged that win in the second race, which Del Pino left on the table, and also got the P2 in the other one. So really about as good as it's going to get, and a deserved championship leader. Obviously runner-up in the Spanish F4, and one of those guys where I think he's been on the record saying he knows he needs to win this championship to secure funding to maybe make his way to F3 next season. So good luck to him. I think he would very much deserve to end up there. One last shout out for the Eurocup crowd though, and as to Jesse Carrasquedo, who so far, truth be told, I don't really rate at all. I think he's one of those frauds, if you can call him that, clearly a lot more budget than talent, let's just put it this way. But we can be positive about this, because actually for once on his debut, well, I think he did a one-off round last year, but his debut this season, and he actually scored a podium pretty much on merit in the second race. So there we go. Bit of an overperformance from Jesse Carrasquedo, but I thought it was worth a shout out. Anyway, let's move on to the F1 weekend. Formula 3 is back, and it produced the best, or at the very least most entertaining feature race of the year so far in a wet or changing conditions Silverstone track. Just phenomenal stuff all the way around with a tyre gamble eventually leading to an on-track win for Callum Voisin, which unfortunately he wasn't able to keep, and we'll get to that in a second. But this then eventually ended up with Arvid Lindblad instead doing the unthinkable, securing a double out of Gabriele Mini. And honestly, too many things happened in this feature race for me to actually talk about them chronologically with any kind of sense behind it. If you somehow missed this race, just go back, just watch it, sit back, enjoy, grab a drink, you know. It was a really, really good one. I am here to talk about the implications of the results, if there are any. And here we can begin with Arvid Lindblad, because as I just said, not only did he win the feature, he also dominated the sprint race. So actually he secured a double. Those are pretty unheard of, as you might know. And therefore now I think he is actually a firm championship contender. Going into this season, I thought he was going to play second fiddle to Mini and Beganovic at Prema until, you know, maybe right around this portion of the season where I thought he would be ready to actually rival them on track. But in my particular vision, it would have been too late for him to compete in the actual championship in terms of the points. But as it turns out, he first of all adapted quickly enough and then had some very fortunate races in the early portion of the season. So yeah, he is actually a proper championship contender, and I think I'm already pretty confident in saying he is the most impressive driver to come out of the season, no matter how it ends really. I think the only one who can rival him there at current point in time is probably Luke Browning. Overall, the most well-rounded driver on the grid so far, even if this particular weekend didn't work out in his favor. But yeah, Arvid Lindblad, what a revelation he's been throughout this season. Now, unfortunately, we already just touched upon it. Callum Voisin. Well, on the one hand, I'm really happy we can talk about him here at all. I think it's literally the first time this season I've had time to mention him, because yes, he might be last season's GB3 winner, but being stuck in a Rodin in F3 means you are at best scrapping for like P25 normally. So reasonably, we didn't really talk about him so far. And this weekend, he was on fire. Yes, the entire grid was a little bit upside down. Genser was doing really well as well, for example. But he did all of this on pace. He still dominated both of his teammates in the process. And yes, he took the on-track win in the feature, got demoted to P3. First of all, that's still a podium. And second of all, in the sprint, he took P4 on the road on merit, just in case you want to argue, oh no, he only did it because of the tyre strategy or whatever. No, I think he could have gotten this on pace as well, or at the very least, anywhere near that result. Phenomenal drive all weekend long, and I really hope he finds himself a better seat for next season so he can show off his skills a little more often. Quick shout out on the side to Tommy Smith and Pietro Wisnicki, scoring P4 and 5 as normal like back markers, but they also went on the slick gamble in the feature race and profited massively from it. Yes, they were like 30 seconds behind the aforementioned top 3, so there is still a bit of an obvious skill gap there, but hey, these are about the best results these two guys can hope for. I have to say though, and I just want to point this out quite clearly, on this year's F3 grid, we have 29 drivers where I think they all have some upside, and then there is Pietro Wisnicki, where unfortunately I just don't really see it. It's been quite horrible so far. And I mean, ironically, Tommy Smith usually the other guy you could throw into this conversation as worst guy on the grid. Either way, great racing all around in F3, as per usual really. In F2, and I teased it in the intro, Andrea Kimi Antonelli finally got his first win. Yes, it was only the reverse grid win in the sprint, and we know that wasn't really the goal going into the season, but the way he won was the impressive thing. If you're one of those people only checking results afterwards, go back, watch the race, and just witness greatness is basically the best way to put this. It was a very wet track, and Antonelli kept his cool throughout every single one of those restarts, and not only did he like keep the lead through the restarts, which yeah, that's good, but I mean that's about the goal, but every single time he immediately opened like a 3.5 second gap to Zane Maloney behind. And in the second half of the race, when we did have a longer stretch of green running, he actually just blitzed away entirely and won by almost 10 seconds, like 8 point something I want to say, in like 10 laps. So this is about as good as it gets. This was very reminiscent of the Zandvoort drive last year in Frecker for him. And really, I mean, obviously we are talking about Antonelli as a potential, future great racing driver. And yes, there are some rain specialists that maybe aren't as great otherwise. That's definitely a thing. But if we talk about, greatest of all time kind of drivers, the one thing they've all kind of got in common is they're all great in the wet. So Antonelli certainly checks that particular box. Since Antonelli did get wrecked on lap 1 of the feature, we can't spend all the time talking about him, unfortunately, as much as I would like to. So instead, let's look back to the championship itself a little. And here we can see that Paul Aron had a bit of a shocker where he is the next Mechachrome victim. He got Mechachromed in the first race and then had a bit of his own oopsie in the second one, costing him crucial points. And on the flip side, we did have Maloney, Bortoletto and Hadjar all with good high-scoring weekends. Hadjar in particular with the key feature race win. So really the championship is about as open as it has been the entire time. But for my money, I think we've watched enough now that I think Hadjar is my personal favorite for this particular title. If he can keep his head in the game and doesn't just have a weekend where it implodes, I could kind of see that happening, or maybe, something blows up at Campos with Pepe Marti. I very much doubt that would happen, but he looks like the most complete driver of those, because I still think his main difficulties are actually off track and not on track. So I would very much like to see Hadjar win this title, just so we know Red Bull keeps backing him, probably sends him off to Super Formula, I would imagine, and I think it would be a really good step. I don't know if he's mature enough mentally to go to F1, but I think the driving capabilities might very much be there. Last but not least, quick shout out to Franco Colapinto. Not only does he keep beating Dennis Hauger, a vastly experienced teammate Dennis Hauger, I might add, consistently, but I just want to highlight the way he races on the Sunday in particular, because this has been a bit of a pattern now that Colapinto tends to favor the alternate strategy heavily, so going out on the hard tire first in the feature to take the softs later on, and essentially go for one big overcutty stint. And he makes those work brilliantly, weekend in, weekend out. It's fantastic to watch. He just keeps finding himself in podium contention despite running the suboptimal strategy. Because yes, the alternate strategy, hence why we call it the alternate strategy, will rarely give you the position to actually win a race. But honestly, I think he is getting everything he can out of these races, and it's great to watch. Again, one of these junior drivers that we really need to keep an eye on for the years to come. Williams obviously heavily invested in their own junior program, so who knows, that could be a partnership in the future. I could definitely see that happen. Last but not least, of course, we do have the big show, Formula 1, and it is Lewis Hamilton back on top in front of his home crowd. Formula 1 at its best, really. Mercedes versus McLaren versus Verstappen. There is nothing to complain about here. It was just fantastic racing all around. It feels like I've been saying this every F1 weekend for like the last 2 months. Like, these races just keep getting better. This season has gone from a snooze fest to spectacular in a couple of weeks, and I am all for it. Obviously, personally, I think I've said it in the past a few times, I'm not like the greatest Hamilton fanboy of all time, to just put it this way, but I think if you can't find any enjoyment in watching that man win in front of his home crowd after everything that has happened between 2021 and now, then maybe sports just isn't for you. I don't know, like this was great. This is great entertainment, great just sports, really. Yeah, I don't know what else to say here. To add some substance to the discussion instead of just, going on about how great it was to watch, I do want to talk about McLaren a little bit, because they do find themselves in a quite unique position now where I think they have actually almost figured it out. They do have most of the pieces they need for an actual championship fight. Yes, this season, obviously, mathematically, it's not gone, but very unlikely. But they do want to keep this form going and set themselves up to be a prime contender for next year, obviously. So we do need to figure out what they have and what they don't. And for me at the moment is they definitely have the drivers. Norris is fantastic and I think can you know, lead a world championship effort at the moment. I think he does look capable of doing that. And then you have Piastri, who, yes, not going to be a world championship contender himself next year, probably, I don't think, but obviously a very talented and crucially a very, very solid young driver, where he's not quite pushing Norris too much, but he is always there. He's not doing a Paris, he's not at the opposite side of the grid. He is very much fulfilling his role in the team. And then on the second part of the equation, they also have the car now. They have a car actually capable of fighting for wins on merit on various different tracks. They're no one-trick ponies. They don't need to have the perfect weekend or whatever to be at the front. No, they are just at the front pretty consistently. So that's 2 of the 3 figured out. And now, unfortunately, they are lacking the operational side of things, and I get it, because to an extent I think that's something you can really only learn when you have a race-winning car, because I think the way teams need to think strategically with a race-winning car and like a midfield car is completely opposite. In the midfield, you need to gamble a lot, you need to, you know, find ways to put yourself into positions that you probably shouldn't be in on merit. Whereas when you're a front runner, all you need to do is really make sure you don't throw away a random track position, or, you know, essentially you just need to make sure you're not the one doing a gamble which then doesn't work out. So ideally you just don't really need to gamble a whole lot because your car is good enough, right? Makes sense. One should think that's quite simple. Unfortunately, they still managed to completely ruin Piastri's race, and yes, it wasn't really a gamble, it was just a bit of a mess up by not double stacking him and Norris. But nonetheless, this is the kind of error which you can't afford when you're fighting for the championship. Not only does it concede crucial points in like the constructors and everything by dropping Piastri down the order a bit, but more importantly, it also robs Norris of a potentially important wingman. Now, yes, in this case, it was a one-stop. He didn't really need that wingman anymore after, but you know, it could have happened. He could have needed Piastri afterwards behind him, and then he wasn't there anymore. So McLaren really needs to now figure out how to be a winning team with the on-track operational side of things, in my opinion. Last but not least, I just want to give a quick shout out to Nico Hülkenberg for yet another P6. What a beast this man is this year. It's been phenomenal to watch. I don't think anyone really anticipated this at all, and I really hope he gets a decent car at Audi and maybe gets that podium for closure, which I think we all deserve at this point, not just he himself. But yeah, just the regular shout out, I think it is very much deserved. Anyway, that was it from me for this week. Keen watchers of Junior Series might notice that there is some American racing missing, quite a lot of it actually, as the entire IndyCar ladder has been racing as well. Unfortunately, I won't have time to edit a video of that length, so we'll just skip all of that and focus on it the next time it comes around. My most important talking points of that was Caio Collette's win, first of all, and what that might mean for him in the next championship. I still haven't given up hope entirely. And then really the most important one, IndyCar introducing hybrids in the middle of a season, and it immediately fucking over Scott Dixon before the race had even started. So yeah, if you've got thoughts about that, you can leave me them down in the comments together with all the other thoughts about all things Formula Racing. And otherwise, thank you all for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next one.